Here are the reporting mistakes that you need to avoid. Now, most reports, dashboards, metrics, etc., they rely on pulling and showing you information. But what they should really be doing is helping you to shape decisions. And as somebody who's built probably hundreds or maybe even thousands of dashboards and reports for clients in the past few years, as well as somebody who runs their own company and relies on these reports to actually drive positive change, I have done a lot of things wrong. And I want to break those 3 big mistakes that I've made in the past and what I do now instead to actually give me good reports that help me to shape really, really good decisions. Now, mistake number 1 that I see very, very often, probably in 90% of reports, is that the report doesn't actually inspire change. Now, what does this mean? Most companies, they report on things because they always have. Someone asked for it one time, maybe a year ago, and that metric is still there for some reason because the tool makes it easy. It was an out-of-box report that they just pulled in, they showed, and then they just have it on their dashboard. Or it's just a good metric to track because maybe somebody told them so once, and they have that report within their dashboard. Now, the one question that I ask myself now, rather than just presenting this information, is what would we change or what would we do differently if this metric was changed? So if this metric went up or down, if the number went up or down, would that inspire some kind of change? And if the answer is it wouldn't require me to do anything, or we would just keep an eye on it, or it's just good information to know, then it really should not be on the report. And one of the things that I like to use as an analogy is a car dashboard. In a car dashboard, you have a few very simple lights that tell you when something is wrong. You have your gas light, your check engine light, your tire pressure, a few very core things that when they're on, they alert you to some kind of a problem that you would almost immediately take action on, right? If you're low on gas and your gas light comes on, your immediate reaction is to find a gas station. If your tire pressure is low, you look at that light, you immediately get out of the car, double check the tires to make sure that everything is okay. Now, those are the very few key metrics that inspire us to take some kind of an action and make some kind of a change. And that's really exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the reports and dashboards that we use in our companies. Because if we had 100 different lights on our car dashboard and every time we went to start our car, 20 of them are always on, another 20 are kind of flickering on and off randomly, depending on which day it is, those would probably not inspire us to do anything, and they would probably just present information that's irrelevant to us and would confuse us more than help us. So that's the analogy I like to use, and I just think of every single metric that we have that we report on, and I think if this number goes up or down, if this metric changes slightly, would that prompt me to take some kind of an action? And again, if the answer is no, then you probably don't need that metric. That's a good rule of thumb to keep in mind. Now, good metrics, they force a trade-off, some form of a trade-off. They highlight a good constraint, and then they trigger action, kind of the things that I just went over. And a bad report creates comfort, gives you the illusion of control, and it wastes leadership attention, and it just wastes your attention and overstimulates you with information that you just do not need. So that's point number 1, reporting that doesn't inspire change. I didn't add change here, a little typo there, but you want to make sure that everything that you're looking at inspires some kind of an action. Now, mistake number 2 is that reporting that looks back too far and is already too late. A lot of reports that I've seen in the past that I've myself run in the past show what happened last week, last month, last quarter, sometimes last year. And while these are great for general analysis or forecasting or just being able to look back retroactively, the further back a report is, the harder it is to justify the change today. Because if you look at a report from last year and you see something wrong and you're already halfway through this year, you're probably not going to be too motivated to make that change because so much time has already passed, and giving it another month probably won't impact much. Is the way that you'll justify it to yourself. So you want near real-time reports, real-time if you can get them, ideally running at least once a day to pull in those metrics, if not just seeing them literally real-time depending on the tools and information that you're pulling from. And the reason we do this is that small problems and delays, they compound very, very quickly, and they could become really, really big failures over time if you don't catch them quick enough. So if you can't pivot when the data arrives and it's already been too long and it's just gone over the hill and it's really, really hard to get it back up to steam again, that becomes a problem. And what we're trying to do, again, with these reports and metrics is drive positive change. So we need to be able to see when something is even slightly off in almost real time so that we can correct for it as soon as we can. Now, sometimes we'll see these metrics that are off, and these metrics will, those are the metrics that will probably just get on target on their own, which is totally okay. But there have been so many instances where I saw a metric that was reported and it was just slightly off. And I put a little bit more attention into that metric to being able to solve that constraint or that problem ahead of time before it spiraled into something much, much worse. And that saved me a lot of headache that I would have probably had if I didn't just look at that metric in that moment and see it turn red, yellow, or whatever color you're using for off track. So reporting that only tells you what did happen can't help you change what is happening. And good operational reporting, it reflects the current state of work, it shows you the bottlenecks as they emerge, and it enables fast course correction. Again, even if these things are very, very minor, you have the ability to immediately course correct and make those changes. And this also ties directly into fewer status meetings because you need less times to actually sync up to find out what everybody's doing. Is everybody on track? Are there any blockers? These reports can actually tell you that, especially if they're real time. Less firefighting and more controlled execution. So near real-time reports, or just being able to have reports that are not looking too far back, is going to be very critical and the second most common mistake that I see. Now, number 3, this is probably the most critical of them all and the one that I see being done wrong the most. And most reports that I've put together for clients, for myself in the past when I was doing this wrong, was to create reports based on outputs rather than outcomes. Now, what is the difference between the two? So outcomes or outputs are essentially things like tasks completed, tickets closed, hours logged, velocity, and outputs show activity. Outcomes actually show impact. And I'll give you a very specific metric that you can look at that will almost seem like the same thing, but means two vastly different things. So we could look at an engineering team. And one metric can say number of work items resolved or closed or completed. And the other metric can say features shipped to the product. Now, you can look at both of these and say, well, they're almost the same thing because if we close out every single work item, it'll be the same thing as shipping more features. But that's not always the case because we can close a lot of work items and not have any features shipped, while the features shipped is really what impacts our company, our customers, our revenue, our bottom line, and makes the most impact on our company and on our team. So focus less on the things that show activity and less on the things that show outputs, and focus on things that actually show outcomes, things that drive business change, things that show business impact. Those are the things that are going to absolutely matter the most and give you the most information wrapped into one metric rather than trying to pull a whole bunch of outputs to represent one general outcome. So that's kind of the biggest change there. And one thing that I've kind of learned myself is that you don't need to know how busy people are. That is completely irrelevant. What you do need to know is whether progress is being made. Because again, it doesn't matter how many work items are closed, it matters how many features are shipped. How many things are delivered to customers? Those are the things that actually matter not only to you, but to your customers as well. So focus on the things that are outcomes rather than outputs. Now, what does good reporting actually look like? Those items kind of all rolled into one. Number 1 is that it inspires change. Number 2 is that it reflects the current state. Number 3, it focuses on outcomes. And a quick bonus one is that it is intentionally minimal. And I say intentionally minimal because less is more. And the more you could think about how do we get the same information with less metrics, the better the report becomes. So when you try to intentionally remove things without getting less context or information, you end up with something that is very, very optimal, very efficient, and really gives you what you need to know. And again, reporting is not about knowing more. It's not about having more information. It's about being able to act faster, being able to find the constraints that you have in your company, in your team, and being able to enact change on those items. And if your reports don't change behavior, they're not helping, they're just hiding the problem.